Hello colleagues, let's start talking about John Dewey's pragmatism. First of all, what is American pragmatism in general? We can say this is a philosophy of consequences. This type of thought centered on the significance of the results of affairs between people, of course. Precisely, pragmatism is a set of thinking tools designed to assist in action. Action is a direct meaning for the Greek word pragma. So pragmatism relies neither on a priori truth nor on positive facts. As William James said, truth is what works, and we can add works in real life. In other words, this type of philosophy, truth is practical utility. It arises from the environment, so knowledge is derived from the experience. If experience changes, then knowledge changes. Knowledge is not static, but it is applied to experience. Therefore, an object is something that appeared because of activity. What I said is well-known Charles Peirce pragmatic maxim. Even when we do not know but only believe, we justify our faith by its practical consequences. That's exactly what William James said in The Will to Believe. And what is specific about John Dewey's pragmatism? It is that everything that an active person uses, ideas, beliefs, knowledge, morals, and so on, are instruments. We can say the pragmatic tools of their activity. Therefore, Dewey's pragmatism is named instrumentalism. So, available is only their ability of instruments to solve problems. To solve means to produce desirable outcomes. If individuals can't solve their problems, then they must passively adapt or actively adjust to it. Namely, to produce, adapt, or adjust, it is imperative for the individual. This is the source of pragmatists' morality. So, Dewey's pragmatism is a dynamic process in both action and reflection. Process which Dewey described as an action of doing and undergoing. That's why for him knowledge arises from the interacting with the environment, but not from abstract theory. Abstraction are unable to guide action effectively. We may say that each person has existential problems, and each person solves them individually in their own way. This decision and their consequences shape a personality. Of course, there are no other personal goals besides personal profit, but Dewey emphasized that true solution of problem and personal production of reality cannot run counter to social goals, and this is what distinguishes solution and production from adaptation and adjustments. This socialization of instrumental pragmatism and the moral quality of personal goals famed Dewey's pragmatism from other kind of pragmatism. I think it should be noted here that the pragmatism is exclusively American and extremely valuable product of American culture, entirely rooted in American society. And in addition to being an authentic American product, Dewey's pragmatism is one of the few real paradigmatic reactions to Hegel's philosophy, which made Dewey's pragmatism a worldwide intellectual phenomenon. In fact, in the social-political dimension of the critique of Hegel's philosophy, there are only two most significant intellectual paradigms, the philosophies of Karl Marx and John Dewey. If we widely look at the significance of the ideas of Marx and Dewey for the history of social-political culture, then in fact these two thinkers have determined the megatrends of the social-political thought of modernity. Marx's social project, if I can say it like this, turned out to be primarily decisive for the so-called European world. And the Dewey project is different. His project, unlike Marx's project, was creative. Dewey's project, which first was virtually unknown in Europe, became something like intellectual manual for modern America. It is no coincidence then that Dewey is called America's national philosopher, or the philosopher of American democracy, or as others called him, the consciousness of the American people. However, in any case, it was instrumentalist idea of John Dewey that changed the world paradigm of the social science and actually created this paradigm in America. And I want to talk a little about John Dewey's reconstruction in philosophy. What is reconstruction in philosophy? I'm not referring to the strict content of John Dewey's seminal book, which served as a critic of traditional philosophy and called for the new pragmatic approach. But I'm talking about the very concept of reconstructions, a set of new ideas that have taken shape, a very important philosophical trend in the history of American thought. As a rule, instrumental pragmatism in its, we may say, intellectual equipment, this reconstruction in philosophy, is usually placed by historians on thought in the middle period of John Dewey's works. This period follows the so-called John Dewey's early works, which was influenced by Oxford Hegelianism. It was after the passion of Hegelianism Dewey began a reconstruction in philosophy, which formed the basis of his version of pragmatism, which was called instrumentalism, as I said previously. This is a reconstruction in philosophy is part of a wide project that Dewey called the movement of pragmatism. What is the essence of this intellectual project? First, it is breakdown of the didactic philosophical tradition. This is an attempt to teach thinking not to look back at tradition. But how do we understand this? Basically, tradition is simply the transmission and acceptance of philosophical legacy. That's right. It is precisely the rejection of the inherence of the so-called special world of philosophers. This is the rejection of pure ideas. Dewey asserts that the world of philosophers does not exist. There is no high reality of ideas above reality. This means that there is no transcendence, no world of noumena, no eidos, no eternal wisdom and universal aims, and of course there are no a priori pure values that determine the human action. And what exists? There is only knowledge obtained as a result of life experience. Dewey says that due to accumulation of so-called pure thoughts, people cannot fully use their most valuable things that they have obtained through their hardest work, through risks. There is the achievement of experience. Instead of being a tool for solving the real-world problem, philosophers had become a pursuit of absolute truth. We can say that metaphysics prevent people from using physics, or to be more precise, people need to learn how to fully use their scientific achievements. Dewey says that there is a need to expand the breach above the gap between physics and sociality. Philosophers do not need to demonstrate the difference between philosophy and the natural sciences. It is not pragmatic. Instead, philosophers need to learn how to distinguish between free and non-free thinking. Do you believe that if the gap between philosophy and the exact science was not breached, philosophy will not only continue to deal with something abstract, but would become, as he put it, encourage of obscurantism? What is encouragement of obscurantism do you have in mind? For American society, obscurantism is propaganda of the ideal of aristocracy. However, Dewey warns against another extreme, the so-called positivist repudiation of philosophy. Positivist repudiation is the replacement of philosophy by technocratic expertise. Why? Expertise is good. The problem is that positivism will help to technocratic elite to come to power in society, and then the oligarchy will come. Under the rule of oligarchs, society will fall into this depression and gradually begin societal split. Let's mark. A reconstruction in philosophy is not a repair of method of philosophy or a configuration of theory. Reconstruction in philosophy has no direct relations to the methodological problem of theory at all. The point of reconstruction in philosophy is to make intellectual work useful, here and now. Discussion about society, morality, law, politics should cease to be speculative. Philosophy should touch the life of an ordinary person. Dewey wants to destroy the hierarchy between theory and practice. From now on, practical problems are important and the theoretical problems are secondary. Dewey gives the example of the Einstein theory of relativity, which has no theoretical premise in common with Euclidean geometry, Newtonian mechanics. Lack of common theory does not interfere with practice. What is the new meaning of philosophy for Dewey? Reconstructed philosophy is, first of all, the articulation of the social plan of action, an exposition of the political strategy that is useful for the development of society. Modern philosophy cannot afford to be social and politically undefined. Therefore, modern philosophy should be engaged with their clear public strategy, a project of joint life, a choice which concerns everyone. Such a universal public strategy does not fit into the monarchy, an aristocracy, or an oligarchy. These regimes limit the active action of significant part of society. Therefore, is only one mode of social structure suitable for modern philosophy, and it is a democracy. Only in democracy there are no insurmountable social barriers. In democracy, everyone who wants strive to be included in the collective life or realize themselves as a citizen, everyone gets this opportunity. So modern philosophy is simply democratic thinking. And even more, in Liberalism and Social Action book, Dewey defined democracy itself as the method of democracy is organized intelligence. Let's record here that reconstructed philosophy is in fact philosophy of democracy. If you are interested in John Dewey's political and philosophical thought, then I'm pleased to offer you a course. A link to it is in the description. Thanks for your attention.